Well, let's bring in our Shadow Defence Minister, Andrew Hastie. Andrew, great to see you again. Look, why do you think the Albanese government is dedicating fewer resources to boat and aerial surveillance?
Well, Sharri, we've seen surveillance flight hours and maritime patrol hours go down under this government. They're underinvesting in Operation Sovereign Borders. And all that does is send a signal that we're not serious about protecting our borders. It signals weakness to the very people we're trying to stop, the people smugglers. So the best way to deter people smugglers is to demonstrate you're serious about protecting the borders. And in order to do that, you need to have a fairly heavy surveillance presence both in the air and on the water. Under this government, it's gone down. And since the 22 election, we've had 19 boat arrivals. Just in the last 2 months, we've had about 5 boat arrivals with 150-odd people illegally arriving in our waters. So that's a problem, and we're going to see more of it, particularly with Tony Burke, now the Home Affairs Minister.
Look, the Prime Minister has said that it's the coalition that's talking up this problem, that's sending the message to people smugglers that it's now Labor's now weak on this issue and that there'll be more boat arrivals. What's your response to that accusation?
I think Anthony Albanese is not someone who takes responsibility. And his job as the Prime Minister is pretty simple. It's to keep our borders secure, it's to keep our country safe, and it's to build our prosperity. He's failing at the first hurdle. He can't even keep our borders secure. So what does he do? He points at the coalition and says that we're creating something out of nothing. Well, I think the record speaks for itself. The Rudd years showed people smugglers that Labor can't be taken seriously on border protection. And as we've seen since the May 22 election, we've seen 19 boat arrivals. So I think the evidence is in. This government is weak on borders, and people smugglers are working this Prime Minister out.
When I spoke to your colleague James Paterson today, he accused Albanese and Tony Burke of launching what he called unhinged attacks on him. Here is what they both had to say.
Can I just say, what an idiotic comment from somebody who's clearly never been a minister and has, like, he's made up a way of looking at statistics about me. If that's the character of my shadow, then yeah, we'll just deal with what comes at.
James Paterson is a shocking message to Australians that all you need to do is to be negative and oppose everything. It's about time James Paterson stood up for the Australian national interest.
Andrew Hastie, what do you think about this sort of character attack?
I hear two deeply insecure men attacking my colleague, who's very competent, is across his brief, and has created all sorts of challenges for this government by keeping them accountable in his role as Shadow Home Affairs Minister. So I'm pretty sure James Paterson will be framing those quotes because all it demonstrates is that this government hates when we call them out. They know he's competent, and as I always like to say, the flak is thickest when you're over the target. James is consistently over the target when it comes to Labor's border protection policies.
Now, what about this decision by the Prime Minister to break up the Home Affairs portfolio? I mean, he stripped now ASIO, the top spy agency, out of it. He's moved it to the Attorney General's. His reason that we just showed you earlier was because it needs to go with the AFP. But ASIO and the AFP were both under Home Affairs when he took office. So what do you think about this dismantling of what was once a super ministry in charge of our national security?
They've completely dismembered Home Affairs. You're absolutely right. I think this has been on the cards for some time. I was the chair of the Intelligence Committee when we passed the enabling legislation for the Home Affairs portfolio. Mark Dreyfus back then, who was the Shadow Attorney General, he made it very clear that he didn't support this. And it's no surprise now that he has broken down the Home Affairs Minister. He's stripped out the operational agencies, the AFP and ASIO. He's brought them into his portfolio. So now he gets to run operations and also issue warrants. And I think there was a healthy tension at the Cabinet table. Labor have dismantled that, and I think we're poorer for it as a result.
I mean, it's obviously not something you would announce now, but do you envisage that the coalition would strengthen Home Affairs again if it did get into government?
I'm sure that's something that Peter Dutton and James Paterson and the rest of the team will be considering in coming weeks and months, yes.
Yeah. Just finally, you are Shadow Defence Minister, and there are concerns tonight as we go to air that Israel and Lebanon are on the cusp of war. This after the tragic murder by Hezbollah of 12 children in Majd al-Shams. Netanyahu has vowed to retaliate. He says it'll be a direct strike and has warned this will be coming. We don't know precisely when. Are you concerned that the Iranian-backed Hezbollah are provoking, and have been provoking for months now, Israel into a broader war that could escalate?
I think Hezbollah, of course, are always seeking to provoke Israel, along with Hamas. And if you read both of their charters, as I have done, they're committed to the destruction of the State of Israel. So these aren't people who want peace. They're not going to negotiate, and they'll continue their attacks on Israel and forever, essentially. And so Israel has to defend itself. We've been very consistent as the coalition. Israel has a right to defend itself. Of course, it's terrible to see those 12 children killed, innocent kids killed, along with all the innocent life that we've seen lost over the past 9 months or so. But the best way to defeat terrorism is to show strength, and Israel has every right to defend itself after this latest attack.
And of course, Peter Dutton is actually in Israel at the moment, a 4-day trip. He met overnight with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. I mean, Andrew, what does this say about the coalition's commitment to Israel and the Jewish community here in Australia?
I think it demonstrates that Peter Dutton is a friend of Israel. He's a friend of the Jewish community here in Australia. He's been very consistent in calling out terrorism and condemning it. He's been very consistent in upholding Israel's right to self-defence. And I think that demonstrates that we are committed to maintaining the one democracy in the Middle East, and that's why Peter's gone all the way over there to meet with their officials and to demonstrate his support in person. There's nothing like a house call, Sharri, as you know.
Yeah, a very significant trip, a huge signal of solidarity. If only our Prime Minister would have made such a trip like many other Western leaders did after October 7. Andrew Hastie, thank you very much for your time.